The sound of hedge trimmers cut through the morning silence like a warning siren. Evan didn't know it yet, but this was the day his quiet life would be tested. He stood on his porch, mug shaking slightly, watching HOA workers slice down the tall green hedges lining his yard. Those hedges had stood for years, shielding his home from the luxury properties uphill. They weren't just plants. They were peace. An hour later, an email arrived, polite and smug, explaining the cuts were made to improve community views. Evan understood immediately. The view they wanted was through his life. He reread the HOA rules that night, heart pounding, noticing something the board hoped no one ever would. A small clause. Easy to miss. Legal. Powerful. Evan didn't respond. He didn't complain. He waited. Because sometimes the strongest moves are made quietly, and the people who think they've won never see what's coming next. The HOA expected anger, emails, maybe even threats. What they got instead was silence, and that unsettled them. Days passed. Evan replaced nothing. No hedges. No complaints. From the hill above, neighbors now had a clear view straight into his yard, his windows, his life. Smiles appeared at first. Then whispers. Evan spent his evenings measuring, researching, and documenting everything. He pulled old surveys, zoning maps, and permits dating back decades. One line kept standing out. Printed in faded ink. The HOA didn't own the sightline they claimed. They never had. When Evan finally replied, his message was short and calm, thanking them for clarifying visual access. That single sentence made the board uneasy. Meetings were called. Emails flew. But Evan had already filed permits the HOA couldn't block. When approval came stamped and official, Evan smiled for the first time since the hedges fell. The real change was about to rise where privacy once stood. Construction began on a bright, ordinary morning. By noon, it was anything but ordinary. Posts were set deep along Evan's property line, perfectly aligned, fully permitted. The HOA president arrived first, voice tight, demanding answers. Evan handed her copies of the survey, the clause, the approvals. Each page drained more color from her face. The wall wasn't a fence. It wasn't decorative. It was a fully legal privacy structure, allowed by height, material, and placement. Taller than the hedges ever were. Stronger. Permanent. Neighbors gathered, confused, watching their prized view disappear panel by panel. The HOA threatened fines. Evan calmly showed them why none applied. For the first time, the board had no leverage. As the final section rose, sunlight vanished from the uphill patios. The same people who once looked down into Evan's yard now stared at a solid reminder of their mistake. And the story was far from over. What the HOA didn't expect was how fast the mood would change. Silence turned into panic almost overnight. Complaints poured in. Property values. Aesthetics. Community harmony. Evan listened politely, then pointed to the exact email where they justified removing his hedges for their benefit. Their own words echoed back at them. Inspections were requested. Inspectors found nothing wrong. Every inch of the wall met code. The HOA attorney stopped returning calls. Neighbors avoided eye contact. Evan noticed something else too. Without the view, the luxury homes lost their selling point. Listings stalled. One offer fell through. Then another. The wall didn't just block sight. It exposed how fragile their power really was. And as frustration peaked, the HOA made one final mistake that would seal their loss permanently. The HOA called a special meeting. Confident numbers were on their side. Evan arrived with documents they never thought he'd bring. He calmly presented proof that the HOA had violated its own bylaws when cutting the hedges. Consent was required. It was never given. The room went silent. Legal liability replaced anger instantly. The board voted to settle quietly, restoring Evan's landscaping funds and covering his legal costs. The wall stayed. The president resigned weeks later. What started as a grab for a better view ended with the HOA stripped of authority and credibility. Evan didn't celebrate loudly. He simply went home, sat in his yard, and enjoyed something he hadn't felt in months: peace. But the final twist was still waiting. Months later, new board members knocked on Evan's door. Their tone was very different this time. They asked if he'd consider adjustments. Evan listened, then declined kindly. The wall had become a symbol, not of spite but of boundaries. The neighborhood slowly adapted. New hedges were planted uphill, this time with permission. Rules were rewritten. Transparency replaced control. Evan's quiet stand changed how the entire HOA operated. People learned that power doesn't always shout. Sometimes it builds, legally and patiently, until there's nothing left to argue against. Evan never raised his voice. He never broke a rule. He simply used them better than the people who tried to bend them. The HOA thought they could take privacy without consequence. They never imagined a wall would teach them respect. Evan's home became calm again, shielded, secure, and his own. The board never touched another homeowner's property without consent. All because one quiet man chose knowledge over noise. The wall still stands today, not as revenge, but as a reminder that boundaries matter, and when crossed, the response can be permanent. And that was the final twist in this unbelievable HOA story. If you love the drama, don't forget to like,